Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 208 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined this week by the ever elusive, the infamous, known around the world. It is of course Mr. Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joe. Yourself?
Very good, my friend. Very good. Right, let's waste no time. Let's dive straight into the review part of the show. We're going to start here at the home of boxing in the UK, the York Hall, Bethnal Green, London, United Kingdom. This one took place last Friday. It was the Golden Contract MTK Global Show. A good few fights, to be honest. I'm just going to kind of whiz through these. The Cuban Heron Socceros. That was the guy that chose Ryan Walsh actually when he picked a blue ball out of the bag or whatever. He actually got TKO'd in the 9th round. So a good win there for Ryan Walsh. He looked real good. He broke his man down. Now 25 wins, 2 losses and 2 draws, and he serves up the first loss there to Socceros, who was undefeated himself, 22-0 with 3 draws, now a loss. Socceros was also given a count in the 5th round. Also on the bill, what I thought would be a real good fight between David Oliver Joyce and Lee Wood. I believe Lee Wood was the guy that chose David Oliver Joyce. It was for the WBO European Featherweight title. Joyce was actually down in the 2nd round and also down in the 7th round, but he was TKO'd in the 9th round of a scheduled 10-rounder. A brilliant win there for Lee Wood. He looked a level above David Oliver Joyce. Hard to really tell what's going to happen with Joyce, because the performance just wasn't up to par. It wasn't as expected. I thought that would be a real competitive fight. For me, it was really all Lee Wood. And, I don't want to say, it's over for him because it would be way too premature to say that. But I don't know. It was real under-impressive against the Commonwealth champion. You do have to kind of think what's he gonna do. That's his first loss though, so perhaps a change of scenery, a trainer, I don't know what it is. Something needs to change there. David Oliver Joyce now 11-1. Friend of the show, Jazza Dickens, picked up win number 28. It was for the IBF European Featherweight title. He took on Carlos Ramos. It was a unanimous decision over 10 rounds. Ramos was down in the 4th round. Again, in this tournament, I think you get a £5,000 bonus if you manage to get a knockout. So we've mentioned 2 knockouts there. Of course, Dickens went the distance, and the other fight ended by going the distance as well. Tyrone McCulloch now 14-0, a win against Razak Najib, who's now 11-4. Quite a decent fight, quite close-ish, but Tyrone McCulloch, the rightful winner there. Moving out now to the Doncaster Dome in Yorkshire, United Kingdom. Former 2-time world title challenger, friend of the show, Gavin McDonnell, picked up a routine win, a 7th round TKO against Nathan Kirk, who's now 12-5. That was Gavin's 22nd win. He's got 2 losses and 2 draws. Very good fighter, Gavin McDonnell. 2 losses at the very top level. Moving out now to Denmark, one fight to mention over here. Ashley Fearfane picked up win number 48. It says that's his 48th win. He's got 8 losses and 1 draw, but he's been saying that's his 50th win. So I don't know if there's been a couple of fights unsanctioned that are not on his box record, or if perhaps he just doesn't agree with a couple of decisions that went against him. It's hard to tell. It's a hard question to ask the guy as well. I'd like to ask him. How's that his 50th win? What happened there? Kind of, do you remember when Dillian White got knocked out by Joshua and then he refused to acknowledge it, and he still said he was undefeated in his bio? Anyways, good win there for Ashley Fearfame, friend of the show. He pretty much won every round against Kasim Umar, who's now 29-14 with one draw. The fight was almost up at middleweight, which is kind of crazy. I'm not sure what Ashley Fearfame's doing up there, but good fighter, and he's got the most wins of any active British fighter, so credit to him. Moving out now to the Action Indoor Sports, which is in Bristol in the United Kingdom. One or two fights to mention. Basically, former world champion Lee Haskins, he returned for what was his 40th fight. It was his 36th win. He does carry those 4 losses. He had his man down in the first round, but it ended up going the 6 rounds, and he picked up the win over points. Sergio Gonzalez was the opponent, now 10-19 with 5 draws, but Lee Haskins' own son was also on the bill. He made his debut. Really cool. Bit of history making there. Anton Haskins picked up a win against the very seasoned journeyman Ibra Riaz, who's now 6 wins, 169 losses and 4 draws. He won every round, Anton Haskins, over 4. So nice little shutout win on his debut. He went the distance. It'd be interesting to see what he can do when he steps things up. Moving out now to the PAL Centre in Delaware, USA. 2 fights to mention over here. Fan Long Meng, the guy that beat Frank Buglioni, I think it was it last year, I think, on the Monaco show. I think he stopped Buglioni, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, I never know why Buglioni took that fight. There were loads and loads of fights on the table, like Anthony Yard. I think he got offered a fight with him. He got offered a fight with Andre Ward, with Sergei Kovalev. They were talking about a Jose Burton rematch, and he decided to just take on Fan Long Meng for some reason, an unknown Chinese fighter, real good amateur, and he got stopped, and it robbed him from getting the paydays you'd have thought those fights would bring, and then he just decided to retire straight after. So I never understood that choice from him. But anyway, Fan Long Meng extended his win streak, now 16-0, a second round KO against Gilberto Rubio, who's now 9-9. And topping that bill, Hank Lundy, friend of the show, picked up win number 30. He's got those 8 losses and 1 draw. It was a win against Robert Frankel, a tough guy who pretty much will box anyone. His record now 37-23 with 1 draw. It was his 61st fight. Unbelievable stuff. Moving out now to the Dort Federal Event Center in Flint, Michigan, USA. It was supposed to be topped by Clarissa Shields and Ivana Habazin. Obviously, a complete disgusting event unfolded. I believe it was at the weigh-in where Habazin's trainer, James Ali Bashir, obviously former kind of second, if you like, to the likes of Vladimir Klitschko. Eddie Chambers as well was trained by him for a while. He was attacked, and long story short, I don't want to start pointing the fingers. I think whoever attacked him has now been arrested and stuff. So basically, the fight couldn't go ahead, and prayers are with James Ali Bashir, because he got released from hospital, and then apparently they found like a further bleeding on his brain, so he's had to go back in now for emergency for an emergency kind of procedure. So prayers are with him, because this is terrible, absolutely terrible. In the end, the co-main event, I believe, ended up being elevated to the main event. Jerome Ennis now 24-0. It was a TKO in the 3rd round against Damian Fernandez, now 12-2. Again, Jerome Ennis, certainly one to watch in the future. I think his nickname is Boots. I don't know why his nickname is Boots. Maybe he wears fancy boots. Maybe he likes to shop in boots. I don't know. Moving out now to New York, USA at the MSG. Let's start with this one, Ayaz, and pretty much finish with this one because it was the main card of the weekend. On the undercard, I will say Nikita Ababi picked up another win. First round knockout there against Isaiah Selden, who's now 13-3 with a draw. Nikita Ababi, I think, has only gone the distance once. All of his knockouts have come in the 1st and 2nd rounds. Also on the bill, very good amateur Joseph Ward turned pro. He got in there with a guy with a winning record, which we like to see. Marco Delgado, 5-1 was his record. And then Joe Ward actually, I believe, dislocated his knee in the 2nd round. He couldn't continue, so he actually lost by a TKO. Not sure what happened there really. Why wasn't it a no contest? I don't know. It's so confusing, even for people like myself. I like to think that I know a lot more about boxing than the average person on the street, but with situations like this, it's so unclear in my eyes that I've got as much idea as just a random person on the street who's never seen a fight before. But yeah, bad start there for Joseph Ward, 0-1, not his own fault, of course. Also on the bill, Ivan Baranchik took on Gabriel Bracero, former opponent of Paulie Malignaggi. That was a fight I definitely didn't see going the distance, but the odds on that were very, were very short kind of thing, so no point really putting money on that. But anyway, Ivan Baranchik won very easily. TKO in the 4th round there for the vacant WBA Intercontinental Super Lightweight title. Baranchik now 20-1. Bracero 25-4 with 1 draw. I think he's got quite a good story, Bracero. I think a few things have happened with him outside of the ring. Quite an interesting character. Also on the bill, topping the bill, let's just go straight to it. Ayaz, Gennady Golovkin against Sergei Derevianchenko. Obviously, Derevianchenko's only loss came to Jacobs in a real close fight. Gennady Golovkin, of course, boxed Jacobs. It was a real close fight. Some people felt like Jacobs did enough. And Jacobs on the cards just about did enough against Derevianchenko. So he was a guy I would have loved to ask who he felt would win going into the fight. It was, of course, for the vacant IBF and IBO world middleweight titles. Derevianchenko was down in the very first round, but it proved to be a real tough fight for Golovkin. He showed him something that Golovkin hasn't seen for a long time, and it was a much better fight than some people thought it would be. I did say it, it had the makings to be a real good fight. I think I said to a few people, it is unbelievably, it is kind of a bit of a super fight, even though Derevianchenko, you feel, hasn't really done enough to be in a super fight at middleweight at the very top, But I knew it was going to be a tough competitive fight. We all predicted a Golovkin knockout nonetheless, and of course that didn't happen, but talk me through the fight anyway, Ayaz, because I keep rumbling on for no reason, talking nonsense, so save me.
I mean, it was a good fight. I mean, a lot of judges thought that Derevianchenko won the fight, in my opinion, for his Golovkin fight. I mean, Golovkin, they did say that before coming into the fight, he wasn't well. He had a bit of a flu, I think. Because I was reading a couple of stories about him. They said that, that Golovkin wasn't right. He was not 100% right in this camp. Obviously, Golovkin, how old is he now? 37 years old, is that correct?
Yeah, 37 now.
37 years old, and he's a 2-time middleweight champion. Wow, he's done very good. I mean, in this fight, obviously, he performed okay, but not at the greatest standard. Obviously, knocking down Derevianchenko, but obviously the reason was because of the flu that he's had. Now, moving forward, obviously, I was reading something as well before that. Kell Brooks said that the reason Golovkin is fading away now is because he put the dent on Golovkin of that fight, which is utterly nonsense. But I mean, like I say, good performance with Golovkin. I really don't want to see that I don't want to see that fight with Canelo third one, because I think after looking at that performance and his age, I think Canelo beats him. The fight I want to see him fight next is I want to see him fight either Andrade or Billy Joe Saunders.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't really see the point in a third Canelo fight. I mean, other than, of course, a big payday for Golovkin, I'm not quite sure what it does. I mean, even if Golovkin were to actually win, then it'd be one apiece and a draw. So they'd need to do a fourth one, So no one really wants to keep seeing these fights. The first fight, again, I felt like Golovkin won clearly, got a draw. And I said it straight away after the fight. I said, in the rematch, if it happens, he's not going to look as good. He's getting older and Canelo's getting better all the time, it seemed. And that is exactly what happened. I actually thought the second fight was a draw. And I think that's how I had it. I had it a draw, I believe. And, of course, they gave it to Canelo. So a third fight, not really interested in seeing that at all. But anyway, back to the fight itself, what we have here. The first round, I mean, it was a bit of a sloppy knockdown. Derevianchenko said the punch hit him behind the head. I think he was a tad off balance as well. Obviously, the punch did land. Until the knockdown, nothing really was landed effectively by either guy. But of course, a 10-8 round there for Golovkin. The second round I felt was a very tactical round, very much nip and tuck. But Golovkin did land two beautiful left hooks, especially in that round, and he opened up the right eye of Derevianchenko also. So it just seemed to be a brilliant start for Triple G, winning both the first rounds. Having a cut on his opponent's face, and of course scoring a knockdown the third round. that cut seemed to actually give Derevianchenko a spring in his step. You know, he came out, he boxed excellently. He even perhaps hurt Golovkin with a left hook to the body. He pushed Golovkin back, which we don't see often. But Golovkin did also have some moments himself in that round. But the fight was certainly starting to heat up nicely. I felt like Derevianchenko actually won that third round. The fourth round was another great round for Derevianchenko. You know, he was again able to push Golovkin back for big moments in that fight. Golovkin's poker face, as we know, is one of the very best. Even when he's under pressure, he was able to just keep himself real calm. He showed the variation in his own shots as well. You know, the cut was worsening for Derevianchenko. I felt a bit bad. I was hoping that we don't see a cut jeopardize what was turning out to be, at that point, even that early, a real good and competitive fight. The fifth round, another real tactical round. I felt like Golovkin probably did the better work, but Derevianchenko landed another peach of a left hook to the body of Golovkin, and he winced and he backed up immediately, Golovkin, so it was a bit alarming there. I did feel like Triple G won the round though. Round 6, definitely a Derevianchenko round. He was pushing Golovkin back again. He was turning Golovkin. He was getting his attacks off. Ultimately, he outworked Golovkin. It was plain and simple. You know, of course, we know Golovkin has got one of the best chins in boxing, but Derevianchenko is such a tactical fighter. It was a real interesting first 6 rounds. Going into the second half of the fight, 7th round was a great round. Probably Golovkin nicked it. You know, I felt he was starting to get through a bit more often, but the spring in the step was still there for Derevianchenko. His movement was working. I actually had it 4-3 to Golovkin after 7 rounds. Obviously, there's a 10-8 round in the first as well, though. But Golovkin was seeming to feel the pace, even though he won the round. The 8th round, again, I gave that one to Triple G. He was starting to really step with his jab, really punch him through the target. The 9th round, again, another round for Triple G for me. Derevianchenko did have some nice moments in the round, though. 10th round, great moments from Derevianchenko at the start of the round. Golovkin didn't even throw a punch for 30 seconds or more. It was all Derevianchenko. He made a brilliant start. Definitely he won the round, even though he did take some bombs just as the bell went from Golovkin right at the last couple seconds of that 10th round. The 11th round, another real close round. Both men had moments. I felt like Golovkin might have just about nicked it. Really could have gone either way, though, that 11th round. And the 12th round, I felt, was a very close round again. Golovkin started well. I felt like Derevianchenko finished well. And I actually gave the round, controversially, to Derevianchenko. But still, on my card, I ended up having it 115, 112. So 7 rounds to 5, but of course with the 10-8 round, that's why there's an extra point. So very close fight, very competitive fight. Derevianchenko, very much a who needs him club type of guy. He's right in that same boat as a Mati Korobov. I hope that we see Derevianchenko and Mati Korobov get other chances. You know, both men have kind of got a right to say, hey, I should be world champion. I was on the wrong end of a decision. A lot of people felt like Derevianchenko won. A lot of people felt like Korobov beat Charlo. You know, there are still brilliant fights out there for Golovkin. I'd personally like to see him in there with a Jamal Charlo. I also do like the Andrade fight. I like the Billy Joe fight, as you mentioned, Ayaz. If Billy Joe was to come down to super middle, come down from super middle. There's a lot of big fights for him still. A lot of very competitive fights. You know, this performance, just because it was a close one and a lot of people hadn't heard of Derevianchenko, the casual fans, they were looking at the record, seeing he's only had 14 fights and he's already got a loss. Not looking at who the loss was to, not watching the fight, and people were saying Golovkin's one of the most overrated fighters in the last 10 years, which is just absolute stupidity. So for me, good performance from Golovkin. So tough. Good performance from Derevianchenko. Showed huge heart in that fight. There's just brilliant fights that can be made in middleweight, not even with the champions. Like I say, with a load of guys that don't hold belts, like Derevianchenko, like Korobov. You know, Daniel Jacobs is in the mix as well. There's many big fights. But yeah, I want to see Boo Boo Andrade tested. You know, and Billy Joe with some of the best fighters at middleweight. Obviously, Canelo kind of leading the pack at the minute, you'd have to say. But yeah, that is about it for the review part of the show. Just before we wrap up part one, the final thing to do is to welcome our very first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the top featherweight contender. It is, of course, Mr. Miguel Flores. Miguel, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, guys, thank you for the opportunity and having me on the show.
Absolutely no problem, Miguel. So first things first, of course, your pro record currently stands at 24 wins, just 2 losses. Obviously, you've been a pro 10 years now. I want to go back, to April 20th, 2013. I mean, you were able to box there on the Canelo versus Trout undercard. Canelo wasn't quite the star he is today, but it was still, obviously a huge thing in terms of your career. You managed to get a win that night as well. What was it like boxing on a card of that magnitude?
Yes, I just said I've been a pro for 10 years, so I'm well experienced, well seasoned. Yes, that night, it was an incredible night. It was at the Alamo Dome, which was I want to say about 2-3 hours from Houston. So man, it was amazing. There was, I think, that night, not even sure how many fans, 70 plus, 1,000 fans. And it was of course, Canelo wasn't the star he is today, but it was a great experience. I've been around, the high level of boxing, throughout my whole career. So, just fighting at the MGM is something even bigger, but, we're aware of what we're getting into, so we're going to be ready for that.
Absolutely, and we are here to discuss your upcoming fight. I do just want to quickly touch on, obviously, the 2 setbacks. Unfortunately, they came back-to-back. 2017, obviously the first loss came to Dat Nagoya in a fight that was real competitive up until that stoppage. Do you just want to give us a word on that fight for those that may not have seen it?
Yeah, obviously, like any fighter, sometimes you just get caught with a good punch, and that's that. I've always said it, I have no excuses for that fight. The better man won that night. Even though I still think, he's not a better fighter, better boxer than me, or just that night he was a better man, and all credit to him. Obviously, we went back and tried to correct a few things that we know we did wrong in that fight, and it was just a learning experience, learning experience. I'm never going to, have any excuses for that one.
And then, like I say, the Chris Avalos fight, July 2017, a fight you were winning on all 3 judges' scorecards. You even dropped Avalos in the 3rd round, and then the fight got stopped due to a cut on your eyebrow, so you lost via technical knockout. Obviously, a real harsh way to lose a fight, really. Just tell us about that one. Again, obviously, a big fight for you at that point.
Yeah, obviously, right back after I lost with Gwen, that's how I have a great team behind me, Louis Cuba Jr., Al Heyman, PBC, because they got me another opportunity on the big stage on a TV slot, and we were up against a tough competitor and Chris Avalos, because he had experience. He had been in there with Carl Frampton and a lot of other big names. But, I went into the fight confident. I was controlling the fight. I had dropped Avalos in the 3rd round. I was beating him on all the scorecards. I had 3 cuts that night, and, trust me, no fighter is going to produce 3 cuts off of punches. It was just a grueling, in toe-to-toe fight, and those cuts were produced by headbutts. I recall the ref even saying, headbutt. So, when they stopped the fight, we really didn't even, fuss about it, because we're like, okay, we were winning. We were sure we were winning on all the scorecards. And, from one point to another, the ref says it was a punch. So, it was a big chaos. Even the commentators for Fox, they were like, wow, this is unseen. How are you going to call a headbutt and then say it was ruled off a punch? But, at the end of the day, a lot of people see that fight and say that Leo Santa Cruz beat Avalos and that Avalos beat me. But if you're a real boxing fan, if you're a real, a hardcore boxing fan, that that was a fluke. That's a fight that I really should have won, by technical decision, because, it was just a matter of time, for Avalos to fall out. But, at the end of the day, that one, I could tell you, it just slid on right off. At the end of the day, I know I won that fight, and it wasn't that hard, but it was a good experience as well.
Yeah, like I say, a harsh way to lose. It's, we see this time and time again in boxing, not the fairest sport in the world. I do want to add, Miguel, I want to inform our listeners of something that they may not know about your journey. Not all boxing journeys are happy ones. It's been well documented that before you even turned pro, obviously a tragic event occurred in your family. I understand it must be an incredibly sensitive subject, but what can you tell us about the situation, obviously, with your brother, Miguel?
Yeah, obviously a lot of people, they question if if I'm able to talk about that. And of course, you know, my brother's part of my team, part of my life, and he's part of the dream. You know, I always want to bring my brother's story with me because, you know, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. Obviously, it was a tragic event, but, you know, that was, I never doubted it to keep going after he passed away. I was only a kid. I was 16 getting ready to turn 17, but I never doubted in my mind that I want to continue the sport. And, you know, I kind of took on his dream and my dream and put it together. And obviously, like any fighter, man, there's mornings that I'm tired, that I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m. to go run. There's times I'm tired, but just thinking about my brother and thinking about my whole family, it's just motivation. You know, I have 2 kids of my own. I have my nephew. That's my brother's kid. You know, I have a family that I have to, you know, support. So obviously that pushes me, that's fuel for me to keep going, you know, and like I said, it's a dream that both my brother and myself had since we were kids. And, you know, I'm one step away from fulfilling that dream and making it all possible. Obviously, we know that Leo is a great fighter. He's not a 3-division world champion for anything, and he's a high-volume puncher. So I know I got to bust my ass in the gym to you know, be able to stand up to that punch output and, you know, compete with him. And we're doing that. We're working very, very hard in the gym to compete with him.
Oh, that's excellent, man. And I'm sure, again, you know, your brother gives you that extra motivation that an underdog needs in a fight like this. Perhaps this is written in the stars. You know, Miguel, remember, you've been a pro 10 years now. 10, it's a lucky number in the sport at times. Maybe this is your time. You mentioned there the fight takes place November 23rd, the Wilder vs. Ortiz 2 undercard. Leo Santa Cruz puts his WBA Super World Featherweight title on the line. Have you watched much of Leo then coming up? I'm guessing you probably have. You mentioned there about his punch output. A very good fighter at the weight.
Yes, obviously. I mean, I've been following Leo since my younger days. Even ever since he started. I remember his brothers used to fight here in shows in Houston when Top Rank was promoting shows here in Houston. His brother, Armando Santa Cruz, he fought a few times here. So I followed that family since I was a kid. You know, it's nothing new to me. I followed them. Obviously, some people know that we're from the same state in Mexico, from Michoacan. So trust me, I used to see him because we were from over there. So I know what he's like. I mean, even though like we do study, but I don't have to do much because we know what Leo is like. He obviously throws a lot of punches. Later in the years, he's tried to box a little bit, but we're coming up with a great game plan, you know, to offset that. And like I said, there's no easy fights in boxing, especially at this stage. And I know what I have to do to compete. And obviously, I'm not here because of the fights I've lost. You know, I'm here because of all those 10 years that I've put in work in the pro ranks. And, you know, everything I put in, all the work I put in the gym to get me to this point, you know, I know nothing was given to me.
And I want to ask you a couple of other little things kind of off subject. I want to ask you, Miguel, have you sparred with many big names over the years? I always like to ask this to people that I speak to for the very first time because sometimes I get a real strange name come out of somewhere and it just really intrigues me. Any big names you've sparred with over the years that we may know?
One mutual guy that actually comes to mind, and he was real well-rounded pro, was Rocky Juarez. I remember going to the gym and watching my brother spar him. I was young, and you fast forward about 10 years, I was sparring Rocky Juarez as well when I was about 18, 19 years old. They called me to spar him. It was crazy, you know, because I'm like, man, this is the dude I used to watch my brother spar with. Obviously, my brother sparred him when he was in his better days, when he had just came off of the Olympics. But I caught up with Rocky, you know, when he was a little bit, you know, older in his age. But still, man, it was always great work with Rocky Juarez. I learned a lot from him. You know, he fought big names. So obviously, I learned a lot from Rocky Juarez. Also, another name I sparred was Guillermo Rigondeaux. You know, that guy was a killer. He was, you know, one of the best fighters I've been in the ring with. He's just impossible to hit, you know. Another name, I mean, he's up there right now. He's getting ready to fight for a world title himself. Shakur Stevenson, you know, that kid's also something special, a great fighter. And, you know, definitely those guys are, you know, part of the process. You know, a lot of times you have to take a ass whooping to learn, but it's worth it, you know, coming from those guys because you learn a lot.
Absolutely. Some brilliant names there. There's obviously a fight happening in the featherweight division this weekend over here in the UK. Josh Warrington defends his title. Have you managed to see much of him? I'm guessing that, if you were to pull off a big win, become champion, he's a guy you'd probably be looking at.
Yes, definitely, man. Josh Warrington, I mean, that's the perfect example of the underdog just overachieving anything, it's possible, because when he was getting ready to fight, I believe it was Lee Selby. I think it was Lee Selby, and then he fought Carl Frampton. Nobody gave that guy a chance to beat him. Obviously, he came out, and man, he's another guy that throws a lot of punches. That's very, very active, and I think he hurt Carl Frampton, a few times in that fight. Nobody thought he could hurt Carl Frampton. So, man, that just shows you that the underdogs are always coming to win. We're always coming to win and give surprises. And, of course, he's a guy that I'm always looking at. And possible opponents, I mean, anybody around the featherweight, super featherweight division, they're always in the radar. We're always because even though I'm a fighter, I'm also a fan of the sport. So, of course, I watch those big fights, Carl Frampton, Josh Warrington, Lee Selby, all those guys around our division. There are guys that I'm always looking at.
And I want to get your prediction on the main event. Wilder Ortiz, the rematch. Obviously, the first fight had some real good moments. I mean, I've got no idea how Wilder stayed on his feet after Ortiz went for him on that onslaught he had. Intriguing fight. How do you see the rematch playing out, though?
Yeah, obviously, when you're dealing with Deontay Wilder, it's going to be you're like on the edge of your seat because you're just like waiting for that big knockout punch to come. But then you have Luis Ortiz. He's a great boxer. Comes from the Cuban boxing school. I've always said it, man. That's the boxing school I admire the most. The Cubans, they're so technical sound, so hard to hit. So I want to say you have to give the edge to Wilder because he already beat him once. But, in the heavyweight division, that's the exciting thing about it, that one punch. I mean, in boxing, one punch could change a fight around. But, I think we have to favor Deontay because he already got the win. And, he's always, positive. And, I mean, we're at the press conference and just the speech he gave out, it's just motivating. But then I was looking over at Luis Ortiz, and the look he had on his face was just like a grin, like he was ready to roll right then and then. So it's going to be an exciting fight. I mean, I'm just blessed to be, part of it. The heavyweight championship of the world, I'm there. MGM Grand, I mean, like I said, one step away from the top of the throne.
And talking of heavyweight rematches, I'm asking this question to everyone that we're speaking to over the last few weeks. Joshua Ruiz, I'm guessing that you'll probably pull him for Ruiz in the rematch. How do you see it playing out, though?
Obviously, the first fight, I think no one gave Andy Ruiz a chance. Obviously, that's another perfect example that the underdog, always comes to fight. That nothing is written in boxing, and obviously we know that Joshua possibly could have got overconfident. He saw a short Mexican kid, little chubby, and he's thinking like, okay, this guy's here for a payday. But obviously, in boxing, you can't ever be too confident. Right now, the way I see things is once again, man, the first fight, if you were a real boxing fan, you knew it was a 50-50 fight because we knew Andy Ruiz could fight. If you were a casual, you would see the guy and you're like, oh, this guy's not winning. But boxing fans knew it was a 50-50. And once again, I think it's a 50-50 fight. Why? It's just something like the Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard fight. I mean, after the fight, Duran won, he went out and, doing all these crazy things. And I think Andy did a little bit of that, and we saw Joshua in the gym grinding. So, I know Joshua wants to get that back. Obviously, he's becoming a lot more focused. He knows what he's getting himself into. But, Andy Ruiz, he's good speed for a heavyweight. So it's another 50-50 fight, of course. I think I'm leaning for Andy Ruiz on that one just because his confidence is there fully. And I think he broke Joshua's spirit in that last fight.
Yeah, very popular opinion. Even this side of the pond, a lot of people siding with Ruiz to do the job once again in Saudi Arabia. And finally, the last question for you here, Miguel. Who is your favourite? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. Who would you say is your favourite UK fighter of any era? It can be a guy still boxing now. It can be a guy who retired many years ago. Who comes to mind when I ask you that question, sir?
Man, it's crazy because I've heard it and I've seen it that the UK fans are hardcore. Obviously you had some great fighters, but I mean, does Ricky Hatton count as a UK fight? He's from over there from England. I think he's one of the best to ever do it. He's a great volume puncher, just keeps coming. Even in his defeats, he always kept coming. So really liked, the way he fought. And obviously now in the later days, you have a lot of great talent coming up. I like, obviously, Frampton, because I study his fight a lot with Leo, and he's the one that, kind of, gave Leo the hardest time in his career. So he's up there with them, too.
Yeah, two very good fighters. And finally, just before I let you go, Miguel, I just wanted to kind of throw it over to you if you've got a closing message for our listeners at all. And also, just give us your social media handles so people can follow you as well if they're not already following across all social media platforms.
Yes, definitely. I just want to thank everybody that's been supportive since day one. All my friends, all my family, my kids. I do it for them. Obviously, the naysayers. I mean, I want to thank them because, believe it or not, the naysayers are motivation for me. I think I want to prove these people wrong. I want to give them a hard look after the fight and tell them y'all were wrong. Just thank everybody. Tune in November 23rd in Grand Las Vegas. It's going to be a show. Like you said, the heavyweight division is going to be popping. We're going to produce a great fight. We're going to try to steal the show. And obviously, you follow me on social media, Miguel Flores on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I have my nickname, at @L_Michoacano number 2. You guys can follow me on there. And obviously, we're always uploading videos and, keeping up with our training camp. You catch a few pictures, a few clips of our training there as well.
Excellent. Very well said, Miguel. Listen, it has been absolutely fantastic chatting with you this week. I wish you the very best of luck for November 23rd in Las Vegas, and hopefully the next time we speak, I'll be speaking to the new WBA Super Featherweight World Champion.
Definitely. Thank you guys for the opportunity to showcase me. Thank you.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. Ayaz, take it away. What news you got?
Yes, the first news is that the KSI vs Paul Logan fight will be shown on Sky Sports box office for $9.95.
Logan Paul. Yeah, I mean, that goes to show how much interest myself and Ayaz have in that fight. I don't know if it's good for boxing or bad. I can see both points. I know it's going to bring a new audience, and quite frankly, I don't know about what other people do, but when I'm paying for a pay-per-view and when, friends of mine are paying for a pay-per-view, because they're paying for it, I don't know if I'm going to sound cheap here, but because we're shelling out for these fights, we want to see the whole card. When I pay for a pay-per-view, I make sure that I'm watching the very first fight on the telecast because I want value for money. I don't just want to tune into the main event. Obviously, I'm a boxing fan, and the customers that they're trying to get to pay for this thing are not going to be boxing fans. They're going to be YouTube fans and stuff. So, will they be tuning in? Some of them probably will. Some of them probably won't, to be honest. But even if 10% of them tuned in to the chief support, because you do have to tune in to know. Someone has to tune in to know when the main event's going to start. So people will be watching the chief support, Billy Joe Saunders and stuff like that. So even if he does gain a few thousand fans, then I suppose it is a positive move for boxing and for him. And obviously there's a few names on the undercard. They're all going to be in, look good kind of fights. But it's definitely not worth £10 for me. I am not going to be watching that one. I don't know about you, Ayaz. Are you going to be putting your hand in your pocket and paying £10 for that?
No, because I don't think that fight shouldn't even be pay-per-view. There's only reason because Eddie Hunt's promoting the fight.
Yeah, I mean, again, they would have probably done some kind of pay-per-view thing on YouTube. But yeah, definitely not worth the money. Quite crazy to see a genuine world title fight on the undercard. 1 or 2, I think, are on the undercard. But yeah, we've got to talk about the news. I'm not going to be watching it. I'm not even interested in it. I was invited to go to the press conference earlier this week, and I've got absolutely no interest at all. So I didn't even bother going. And it just goes to kind of show. I just want to say this. I know that, if you're big enough like at IFL TV, you've got to go to all these media things, but just goes to show some of the media that turned up to it, all those media people like to bash it on social media. They'll be like, oh, it's a complete joke. KSI, Logan Paul, 2 YouTubers. And then they'll turn up to the press conference with their camera dying for an interview with one of those guys to get some views. It's just, it tells you a lot about people like that. But we don't care about the views. We care about the fighters and of course the listeners. We don't care if we're making podcasts for an audience of 10 people or 10,000 people. We're not all about views. Many of the podcasts we've done over the years have been absolutely terrible views, to be honest. And if I only cared about views, we'd probably stop the podcast a long time ago. It's all about love. It's all about good relationships with the fighters and, of course, our listeners. We like to be as interactive as possible. Rant over though. Let people do what they want to do. But yeah, I think the fight's a crazy fight, and therefore I'm not interested in going to the press conference or the fight or anything.
Yes, the next news is that Derek Chisora will face David Price on October 26th.
Yeah, obviously Joseph Parker had to pull out. I think we might have said that on last week's show. I think he got bit by a spider. I spoke to him just briefly. I just basically sent him a message saying, I'm sorry to hear what happened. I'm absolutely gutted. And he was way more gutted than me, Again, I said it to him when we had him on the show a few weeks ago. I said to him, and I said it on the show myself, I felt like he would win that fight hands down. I felt like that'd be a brilliant win for him, and the perfect kind of, the perfect thing that he needs right now in his career to boost him up once again. In steps David Price, though. It's been announced earlier this week. I'm not surprised at all. When I saw what Eddie Hearn had said in an IFL TV interview, he basically gave a short list of names. Michael Hunter was on that list. Of course, I spoke to Mike. That didn't really seem like it was seriously going to happen. He's supposed to be on the AJ undercard. He's only boxed, I think, just over a month ago, so it's not really the right kind of thing. But he would have fought him. He would have thought, he'd fight anyone on 2 weeks' notice. Michael Hunter, he's a throwback fighter, but yeah, it wasn't to be him. And then when I looked at the other names, I think they were considering Otto Wallin. I mean, of course, he's not going to be ready after fighting Fury again about a month ago. Some of the other names were terrible, to be honest. I know that the Shannon Briggs thing was only for a bit of banter. It wasn't like it was ever serious. But out of the other names, I just looked at it and thought, you know what, it's going to be David Price, isn't it? And this is a fight that I have said about 5 years ago would be a good fight at the time. That was before Price got knocked out many, many times. So I always thought that would be a good fight. But at this stage in their careers, David Price, even though he's coming off that win over Dave Allen is nowhere near the level of Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora, in my opinion, will overwhelm David Price and end up stopping him. I think he's actually got one of the worst styles for David Price. I can't see David Price sticking Chisora behind the jab and popping out the right hand here and there. Chisora's a tough guy. I can't see Price knocking him out. And if I've really got to say it, the way to beat Chisora is to box and move. He's got terrible feet, in my opinion, and the way to beat him is to box rings around him. And David Price just isn't that mobile on his feet. He's a big guy, but I can just see Chisora getting on the inside, getting on his chest, overwhelming him and stopping him. But I hope I'm wrong, because I'd like Pricey to do it. I do like Price. Hopefully it's a good fight, but for me, it's not one I'm excited for at all.
The WBC president has declared that Julio Cesar Martinez will face Christopher Rosales for the WBC flyweight title after Charlie Edwards vacated it.
Yeah, obviously Charlie Edwards vacated to move back up to super flyweight, a weight he was at before. Just to clear up, if anyone didn't know this already, when Charlie Edwards turned pro, he turned pro at flyweight. He's absolutely huge for the weight. He decided to move up to super flyweight because I think making flyweight was quite a task. Moved up to super flyweight, actually, started looking real good. He started knocking people out. He looked stronger and fitter, more healthy. And then he went back down to flyweight simply because the chance to fight for a title presented itself. He won the title, of course. He defended it once against the Spanish guy Moreno, and then he obviously got in there with Julio Cesar Martinez Aguilar, the guy that stopped Andrew Selby, and we saw a little taster there of the Mexican. And the Mexican, even though he lost every round to Andrew Selby, he started fast against Charlie Edwards, and Obviously, we know what happened. I think Sonny Edwards said it himself. He said that we were a bit lucky to walk away with the belt because, it seemed like the fight was only going one way. So Charlie had a chance right there, to decide and kind of make the shot, call the shots on what his next move was going to be, and he could still remain champion while he made that decision. So, Charlie did say, because remember, people are going to forget this in a few years' time, but right after the fight, it was announced that Charlie had lost, and Charlie said, do you know what, I'm going to be honest, I struggled to make the weight this time round. I think my future's at super flyweight. And then, of course, when they reversed the decision and said it was a no contest, he's still champion. So he's thinking, oh God, I don't want to let people know that I'm struggling if I'm going to have to fight again and stuff like that. And then, of course, when he got to sit down and, talk to his team and decide on what was best for him, the best thing to do was to move up to super flyweight. And a lot of people are out there bashing him, saying, oh, he's scared to fight him, oh, blah, blah, blah. Trust me. He loves a challenge. He's obsessed with challenges, this guy. And just the fact that people said, he was going to knock you out anyway, you got lucky, yeah, blah, 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 that would have wound him up. That would have made him want the rematch more than anything. Believe me, I know the guy. But, he's posted a few pictures of what he looked like, I think maybe a week or so, or a few days before the weigh-in, and he was overweight by a bit, and he was really dry, and he absolutely looked awful. He looked ill, actually. So, I think it's the right thing for him. He always wanted to be a multi-weight world champion. He was never satisfied about just being a one-weight world champion. He always said it, I want to be a multi-weight world champion. This is his chance to do it. He's a guy with big ambitions, big dreams, and he's on the road to making those dreams come true. He's already done amazing things. And you can't help but really support Charlie Edwards. He's a good guy. A lot of people were hating him when he was coming up for some reason. I never understand that. We've seen the true character of him now, or at least the fans have seen the true character of him now. Very good guy, very humble guy. Will help anyone, and he deserves this. And hopefully we get to see that Cal Yafai fight at some point, because now the fight, I'd say, is probably a bit easier to make. So hopefully we get to see it. It's the right time, I feel, and hopefully we get to see it. But yeah, credit to the WBC for also doing the right thing by Julio Cesar Martinez. He gets a chance against Rosales, the former holder of the belt. It's actually going to be a real good fight, I think, because Rosales is tough as hell. And, he's a big guy, whereas the other guy, Martinez, small guy but tough as well. So that's actually going to be a barn burner, I'd say, that fight there. Should be interesting. May the best man win, and he'll be the new WBC flyweight world champion.
Yep, and that's it for the news.
Okay, thank you very much, Ayaz. Right, moving over now to the preview part of the show. We're going to start here at the Palatrento in Trentino Alto Adige in Italy. Two fights to mention. Just the one, actually. Fabio Turchi, that is, of course, the Italian cruiserweight. I think he beat Tony Conquest. He's 17-0. He takes on Tommy McCarthy, 15-2. That is for Turchi's WBC International Cruiserweight title. That's a 12-rounder there. That, of course, is a Match from Italy show. Also on Friday night, tomorrow, at the Ulster Hall in Belfast, Northern Ireland. A brilliant fight here, actually. I really like this one at flyweight. It's for the vacant IBF Intercontinental Flyweight title. Jay Harris, the Welshman, 16-0. He takes on Paddy Barnes, the bronze medalist, 6-2. We've actually gone to the predictions on that, Ayaz, so I'm going to ask you in just a sec. Jay Harris and Paddy Barnes. But on the undercard, Terry Flanagan gets out, 34-2. He's in an 8-rounder against Michael Ansa, who's 17-9 with 2 draws. Terry Flanagan, I want to see back at a higher level. I'm not quite sure how he's really motivated for these kind of fights here, to be honest. But Ayaz, Jay Harris against Paddy Barnes. Talk to me.
I don't really know much about Jay Harris, but I know about Paddy Barnes. I think if I'm going to go win, I'm going to go with Paddy Barnes to win by points.
Paddy Barnes on points. The listeners have gone with Paddy Barnes on points as well, 43%, and in second place, Harris by knockout, 22%. We had 147 votes on that one. I'm actually going to go with Jay Harris to win. Oh gosh, Jay Harris definitely to win. I think he wins that one quite clear, in my honest opinion. But I would say he will win by points. I think he probably wins on points there, Jay Harris. Great fight, though. Definitely can't miss that one. I think it's on IFL TV, if I'm not mistaken. Also on the Friday night, in the Connecticut Convention Center in USA, 2 fights to mention on this bill. Former world champion Chad Dawson, fight number 41. It's for the vacant WBC United States light heavyweight title. He takes on Denis Grachev, who's now 19-8 with 1 draw. Chad Dawson, like I say, 35-5. And also friend of the show on the undercard, Cassius Chaney, 17-0. He's looking to be. He's currently 16-0. It's an 8-rounder against Santander Silgado, who's 28-7. And moving over to the final 2 bills, this one happens at the First Direct Arena in Leeds, Yorkshire, United Kingdom. On the undercard, we shall mention Mark Heffron, 23-1. He takes on Rui Pavanito, who's 10-9 with 1 draw. That's a 6-rounder there. If I'm not mistaken, Pavanito's the guy that boxed Martin Murray and Craig Richards, and he's a tough guy. That's a tough opponent, I'm telling you there. Also on the bill, Troy Williamson, 11-0 with 1 draw, fights for the vacant WBO Intercontinental Super Welterweight title against Navid Mansouri, who's 20-2 with 2 draws. Lyndon Arthur fights for the vacant Commonwealth title, 15-0 against Emmanuel Anim, who's 14-2 with 1 draw. And a brilliant fight on the undercard. This one for me, I'm really loving this. Zelfa Barrett, 22-1. He fights for the Commonwealth Super Featherweight title against Jordan McCory, 18-6 with 1 draw. Jordan McCory, huge set of nuts on him. He's been in there with the likes of Archie Sharp and Sam Bowen. Again, a lot of people would say it's out of those two to kind of decide who the best super featherweight in Britain is, but there's other people, especially if they live in Manchester, that would say Zelfa Barrett's the number 1. So it'd be interesting to see what Jordan McCory says after, he has the fight with Zelfa Barrett, because those 3 are probably the top 3 in Britain for super featherweights. And the main event, Josh Warrington, 29-0. He defends his IBF World Featherweight title against Sofian Takouch, 35-3 with 1 draw. Obviously, it's a bit of a step down, really, for Josh Warrington. He's coming off of some brilliant fights. He's been fighting big name fighters in Britain, and he gets my respect for that. The fight against Lee Selby, right after that, the fight against Carl Frampton, right after that, the fight against Kid Galahad. You've got to really throw him some kudos there. But Takouch is a guy, he's 33 years of age, from France, and some of these French guys are a little bit padded, I've got to be honest. You look down his resume. I'm trying to do it right now, actually, because a lot of people, you guys know if you listen every week, I don't usually need to check BoxRec, but for people like this, I actually do. And to be honest, the 3 losses that he's got, 2 of the guys I've never heard of, and one of them was Guillaume Frenois. That was the guy that boxed Tevin Farmer and John O'Carroll. He lost quite a close-ish fight, I suppose, with Frenois. That was back in 2009, so 10 years ago. So yeah, Takouch, I don't think is gonna put up any kind of threat really to Josh Warrington. But I'll tell you one thing, Takouch has never been stopped, but our listeners, they've gone with Warrington by knockout, 54% going with that, 42% going with Warrington on points, only 4% going with Takouch to win, hands down. So not many people giving Takouch a shot on this one, but everyone's going big for the Warrington knockout, even though Takouch has never been stopped. For me, I think that Warrington wins on points. How do you see it, Ayaz?
Personally, in my opinion, I'm going to go Warrington to win on points. I don't think Warrington has that knockout power. We can see by his resume and how many knockouts he's had. So if I'm going to go with winner, I'm going to go with Josh Warrington to win on points.
Josh Warrington to win on points, so we agree there. And also, I forgot to ask you, on the undercard, like I say, Zelfa Barrett and Jordan McCory, Ayaz. The listeners going with Barrett on points. I probably have to agree with that, to be honest with you. How do you see it?
Yep, I have to agree with you as well. Zelfa Barrett to win on points.
Great minds think alike, they say. All 3 of us agreeing with that. I say all 3 of us. It's myself and you, Ayaz, and then a bunch of listeners. So there's quite a few of us that are going there with Zelfa Barrett on points. And the final bill to mention, it happens at the Wintrust Arena in Chicago, Illinois, USA. We have on the undercard Anthony Sims Jr., 19-0. He's in a 10-rounder against Morgan Fitch, 19-3 with 1 draw. TJ Doheny, the former world champion, 21-1 26-1. He's in an 8-rounder against Jesus Martinez, 26-9. We have Jessica McCaskill, 7-2. She takes on Erica Farias, who's 26-3. That one's for the WBA and WBC World Female Super Lightweight titles. Dimitri Bivol's on the card. It's kind of gone under the radar almost. I haven't even heard people talk about it. It's 16-0. He defends his WBA World Light Heavyweight title against Lenin Castillo, who's 20-2 with one draw. Castillo gave quite a tough fight to Marcus Brown, if I'm not mistaken. I think he had Marcus Brown down in that fight. He's a good fighter, but he shouldn't really be able to trouble Bivol in any kind of way, to be honest. Bivol looks like possibly the best at light heavy. And of course the main event, we're going to have to mention it at the very end of the show when I'm signing out, because right now it's still up in the air. Alexander Usyk, 16-0. He will be fighting. He's in a 12-rounder. It was supposed to be against Tyrone Spong, who had a record of 14-0, but of course VADA have alerted everyone that they've found something, I think maybe one or two things in Spong's in Spong's drug test. So Spong is out, and I think a replacement opponent will be confirmed by the time we've wrapped up the show in its entirety. So we can't do predictions on that. We can't really even talk about that. So if you want to hear about the thoughts on Usyk's fight, then you'll have to tune into next week's show, unfortunately. Hopefully the opponent is a good one, but like I say, it will probably get announced at the very end of the show, so I will mention that on my own. But that is about everything for the preview part of the show. Just before we wrap up part 2 and finally end everything, the final thing, of course, is to welcome, as always, our second and final guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former multiple-time world champion. It is, of course, Mr. Robert the Ghost Guerrero. Robert, welcome to the show, sir.
How's it going?
Very good, my friend. How are you?
Doing great.
Excellent, man, excellent. So, Robert, first things first, I'm a big admirer of yours. I want to revisit a couple of big moments throughout your career. I want to start, actually, December 2nd, 2005, your first career loss to Gamaliel Diaz. A close fight that you lost via split decision over 12 rounds. Obviously, 6 months later, you came back in the rematch to knock Diaz out in 6 rounds. I'm a big believer in your first loss in boxing being a make-or-break moment for a lot of guys. Do you believe in that too? And if so, was that early loss a blessing in disguise, looking back now, all that way?
Oh, definitely it was. Being able to come back and knock the guy out that actually edged you out on point. Yeah, I mean, for sure, I believe it's a make or break fight too, because you don't know what a fighter really does until he reaches adversity. And it goes to show, if you come back off of a loss, especially early in your career, it just shows what kind of heart and what kind of dedication you have.
Absolutely. And of course, after that rematch, that win earned you a shot at the IBF Featherweight World Champion, Eric Aiken. The best achievement in boxing, of course, is to win a world title. The best way, some people say, to beat a man is to make him quit. Describe the moment that you checked both of those boxes in just one evening.
Yeah. I was so determined, to win that world championship. Eric Aiken, he said a few things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, where, I just felt like he was overlooking me and felt that I didn't deserve to be in there with him. So, I wanted to punish him. I felt I could have knocked him out earlier in the fight. And I actually told him during the press conference that he better knock me out, or not, I'm going to put a bad beating on him. And, that's what I went out there and did. Went out there and went to work and started with a nasty body attack and brought it back to the head and just kept that constant pressure and just banging away. And after a few rounds, he just had enough and didn't want to come back out no more. So it was one of those fights where you achieve the ultimate goal you're going for. And then also, not just that, you did it in an amazing fashion where, you left the guy with no moss no more.
The cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake.
Yep.
And again, you know, your resume is a real deep one. You know, wins back then over the likes of Malcolm Klassen, Joel Casamayor, Andre Berto back in 2012. Please talk me through that fight there with Berto, Robert. That's arguably probably your best win, I'd say.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was one of the awesome wins, you know, especially against a guy like Andre Berto, whose stature was incredible. You know, one of the biggest guys at welterweight, fastest, strongest punching guys, and you know, to get out there and you know, exchange with him on the inside, the outside, box him, and you know, just to put in that type of work and that type of result. I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing fight. I think he really underestimated me also too, is because of you know, I started my professional career at 122 pounds and worked all the way to welterweight. And getting into the welterweight division, I came off of a 2-year layoff with a shoulder surgery on a rotator cuff on my left side, and jumped the 2 weight classes from 135 straight to 47. And it was a big gamble and a big decision. But it was incredible, you know, to go out there and beat a guy like Andre Berto and just dominate the fight and I mean, leave him the way I left him. I mean, it was one of those memorable fights, not just for myself but for the fans.
It certainly was. And of course, after that fight, you called out Floyd Mayweather. You managed to get what you wanted. The Mayweather fight took place May the 4th, 2013. I remember that night very well, actually. One of my most clearest memories in all of Mayweather's fights. You know, it was a very different night for me, of course, than yourself. I remember staying up with a bad migraine. I ordered some pizza and I stayed up to the early hours of the morning to watch that one. But just describe for me what it was like to be in there with arguably, you know, the best fighter of this generation, Robert, and to really give him a run for his money in the early rounds, especially. It
was incredible. I mean, it was incredible. You know, first 4 rounds. I mean, I was doing great. I mean, went out there. Was counter-punching, did some great stuff, hit him with some nasty body shots, and I think the body shots is what kind of put him on his bike and made him just say, heck with this. I'm not going to exchange with him. I'm just going to outpoint the guy and touch him and get out of there. And, you know, that's what he did. But you know, just the magnitude of the event, you know, the media tour, you know, all the press conferences, the all access, I mean, it was incredible. It's an experience of a lifetime, and you know, to be in there also with you know, one of the best fighters, you know, in the history of boxing, and to give him a run and to get credit from him, to, you know, where they go, you know, you cruise to an easy victory, and him in the press conference just go, that was not easy. I had to be on my game every second of that fight. You know, it's nice to hear that, you know, you get that respect from a fighter like Floyd Mayweather, and you know, it's one of those fights that I'm happy with, because it's going to go down in the history books as you know, being in there with possibly the best ever, and you know, in his last couple of fights before he retired.
Absolutely. And I remember in the ring afterwards when they interviewed you, and you showed a load of class after that. You know, you were praising, praising the Lord, and just kind of using that moment, using that if you like, spotlight on yourself to just spread a bit more positivity, which you always do. That was just a real moment of class. That kind of, I think, made a lot of people like you even more, you know, after that, because you put on a brilliant fight, and then to come out and say what you said afterwards was brilliant. You know, the very next fight you had, not a guy with a huge name, but Yoshihiro Kamagai, arguably the toughest man in Japan. What a fight that was as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was an incredible fight. To this day, that was one of the toughest fights I've probably been in was with Yoshihiro Kamagai. You know, him getting the opportunity to put himself right in those big fights with the guys like Floyd Mayweather, you know, the welterweight division, how packed it was, you know, Garcia, Thurman, all these guys are in there. And, you know, with Kamagai, you know, he was ready to go. I mean, he did everything he had to do. And then the venue we were at also too in Carson, California, here in the States, where I mean, the ring is like I think it's probably the smallest fight ring in America. So and the crowd is just there's something about that crowd where it just you're inspired just to go out there and just put on a show, and it's outdoor, and it's pretty much a tennis arena, so like everybody's like on top of you, and I mean it's just an incredible atmosphere, and went out there and banged it out with him, boxed him, banged it out, boxed him. It was a tremendous fight, for 10 rounds, and man, it was one of those fights that the fans loved and appreciated big time.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, that guy, he was never in a bad fight. He was, like I say, such a tough guy, camera guy. Certainly a guy who I feel would be in the who needs him kind of club, because he always brought a fight with him. Obviously, after that, Robert, you had a bit of a rough patch. You boxed 5 times. You lost 4 of the 5. Those losses against Furman, against Danny Garcia, against Peralta, and of course against Figueroa. And then you decided to retire. Now, what actually made you do this U-turn on your retirement, Robert? Because I know that you're a smart guy. Everyone in boxing knows it's not a good idea to hang around too long in this game. So my question is, what made you do a U-turn?
Just not being done yet. I felt I sat back and took the time off and announced retirement. Didn't want anybody picking at me about boxing or anything like that, and really got to sit back and assess myself. I mean, it was just fight after fight and big fight after fight. And I mean, I was always back in the ring, within like 4 months, not even giving my time to relax, recover, assess myself, what I'm doing wrong. And, I was able to sit back and do that and really look at it and see what I'm doing wrong. What I'm not doing, what I'm supposed to be doing to be ready for fights. And, the time off really kind of threw me in that loop where it was like, hey, man, I'm not done yet. I really got the chance to look back and see what I was doing. And I was pretty much half-stepping, in these big fights. The bigger the fights got, it seemed like I wasn't preparing the way I was supposed to be preparing for these big championship fights. I stopped going to training camps. I was training back at home, hanging around and not wanting to leave and seclude myself and be 100% prepared. So, that type of stuff at the championship level is it's unacceptable. I mean, you could get away with some fights, but when you're in with the best fighters in the world, you got to have the best training and the best preparations, and I wasn't doing none of that. So, I just felt I wasn't done yet. I feel great. So I, decided to make that last run.
Yeah, I mean, it's proved to be pretty good so far. You've returned 3-0 in your return, 2 KOs. I get on pretty well with Omar Figueroa. I was messing around with him. I said, how on earth did you beat Guerrero, and then in all the inactivity that you had, Guerrero retired, came back out and fought on the Fury Wilder undercard before you've had another fight afterwards? But,
yeah.
Funny stuff. What is the long-term goal with this comeback here, Robert? Are you trying to make another run at a title at 147? Obviously the division's on fire right now.
Oh, definitely. Looking to make that run at 147 and win a world championship again. And the ultimate goal is to try to be the unified champion. Spence is that unified champion right now. And, but it's about that hard work and proving myself and being right back and getting myself right back in line. And, so far so good. And I'm excited about it.
And you've been very active in this comeback. Have you got a date just yet for your next fight at all? Any kind of month in mind?
No, I'm going to take, Christmas off and spend it with the family. And, that's what I wasn't doing before was I was jumping right back into fights within, 4 months. And I gave my time to recover and assess myself and work on what I need to work on. So, now we're spreading it out a little bit more. And, the older you get, you got to take care of yourself a lot more also. So, that's what we're probably looking towards, maybe like March somewhere there, March, April. So, I'm excited about it though, and be ready. That's all I can say.
Be ready for sure. And who do you see, in your honest opinion, Robert, as the kind of number one guy at the moment at 147? If you had to say out of Spence and Crawford, that seems to be everybody's number 1 and 2. Who do you see number 1 and 2 out of those guys?
Well, I mean, on paper right now, I mean, it's Spence for sure. He's a unified champ. Just beat Porter, beat Mikey Garcia. He beat Kell Brook, and I mean, his resume is just it's deep right now, and proof is in the pudding. He is the unified champion right now, and it's a matter of Crawford just getting those fights. But I think if you look at his fight style and styles make fights, I think their matchup is an incredible matchup. I really feel it comes down to them two fighting each other to see who's the number one guy right now.
That's a fight we'd all love to see, of course. Hopefully it does happen at some point.
Those two fights I would love to see standing across the ring from me.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. And coming down to the last couple of questions here, Robert, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but I must ask this question to everyone that we speak to from overseas. Who would you say is your favourite UK fighter? It can be from any era. Who springs to mind when I ask you that question? Favourite UK fighter, any era?
My favourite UK fighter right now, I think I like Billy Joe Saunders.
Ooh, okay. What about him? About him do you like? Obviously, he's a southpaw.
Yeah, southpaw. I mean, he comes to fight. He's in there. He's slick. I really think his style. I mean, the way he moves. He's a puncher, boxer. He mixes it up, can box on the outside, come on the inside. He's really slick. I just like the way he fights.
Okay, yeah, I think we've had Billy Joe Saunders' name said a few times. Very good fighter, of course, still undefeated. Many big fights as well for him, whether he decides to stay at super middle where he is at the minute or move back down to middle. I do just want to say, though, Robert, that personally, I mean, I think you're a real credit to the sport of boxing, not just as a fighter who gives it his all every single time he gets in the ring, but also as a man. I really respect what you stand for, and you really are, I feel, one of the few role models that we have in this sport. I do just want to let you know, though, that everyone in the UK, I'm not sure if you're our favourite Guerrero. A lot of people love Ruben. Your father's a bit of a legend over here.
Yeah, everybody loves him here in America too. He's a character, and people love that, the way he entertains and the way he comes out, and he's that old school lowrider guy. He's a ball of energy, and I mean, he loves it. So yeah, he loves the fans out there too. I mean, he really cherishes all of them that love to watch him.
Yeah, we do love to watch him. And finally, Robert, just before I let you go, my friend, have you got any closing words to your UK supporters? I'm sure over the years you've probably had a whole heap of love from guys over here in the UK. We really do respect true boxers, like I say, real role models. You are one of those. What's your message to your supporters from this side of the pond, my friend?
Just thank you for all the support. Really truly been a blessing on my career, and every time I see people from the UK, I mean, they embrace me with open arms, and it's like you said. I mean, they really embrace, and they love the sport of boxing, and it's amazing. It's amazing, and hopefully by the end of my career, I can get out there and fight for the fans out there one of these days. Either with a Kell Brook or even Amir Khan. I mean, it'll be incredible.
We would absolutely love that, I'm telling you now. Listen, Robert, it has been a real delight sharing some time with you today. Best of luck with the future. We can't wait to see you out once again next year. Enjoy Christmas, enjoy the little bit of time off, and I'm sure that we'll talk again real soon, my friend. God bless.
Hey, God bless you. Thank all the fans also, too, out there in the UK, and keep watching because Guerrero's back.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 208 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. A massive thank you to our two guests on this week's show, the top featherweight contender Miguel Flores and, of course, the former two-weight world champion Robert Guerrero. The predictions are back this weekend. Best of luck with that. Again, the news, Usyk's replacement opponent has been announced. It will be the 38-year-old Chaz Witherspoon. Chaz's last fight of note was when he actually got knocked out by Seth Mitchell 7 years ago in 3 rounds. It's a terrible replacement, but there wasn't much time really to get a fight done. Usyk's heavyweight debut was supposed to be a few months back, but of course he got injured in the lead up to the Takam fight. Then we had to wait for this fight, and with Spong failing a test, Usyk simply couldn't afford to put it off any longer. I've got a feeling Usyk might carry Witherspoon a few rounds just to simply get the rounds in at heavyweight, or of course he may just end up knocking Witherspoon out in a round or two. In other news, Jose Ramirez, the WBC and WBO unified super lightweight world champion, has decided to auction off his fight worn attire from his fight of the year candidate against Maurice Hooker. Ramirez was able to raise $10,000 and he donated it to the family of Maxim Dadashev, a warrior of course that boxing lost earlier this year in the ring. Obviously a real kind gesture there from Ramirez. It's not the first time he's done something like that. A very charitable guy, a champion outside of the ring as well as in it. Friend of the show, Blair Cobbs, will fight on the Canelo versus Kovalev undercard on November 2nd. He'll be boxing Carlos Ortiz for the vacant NABF title, so I'm really pleased for him. And of course, finally on that KSI Logan Paul undercard, Billy Joe Saunders will defend his WBO super middleweight world title against Marcelo Esteban Cosares, a guy with a record of 28-0 with 1 draw. Cosares is from Argentina. He's also a middleweight. He hasn't even boxed at super middleweight, so I've got no idea how he's even getting the shot, but it is what it is. That's about everything though. Remember to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Please leave us a review on iTunes if you haven't already. Thank you all for listening to this week's podcast, and we shall see you all again next week.